Reading through the Bible in 1 year, March 12th, Exodus 23, John chapter 2, Job 41, and 2 Corinthians chapter 11. You shall not bear a false report. Do not join your hand with a wicked man, or to be a malicious witness. You shall not follow the masses in doing evil, nor shall you testify in a case so as to turn aside after the masses, in order to cause justice to be turned aside. Nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his case. If you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey wandering away, you shall surely return it to him. If you see the donkey of one who hates you lying helpless under its load, you shall refrain from leaving it to him. You shall surely release it with him. You shall not cause the justice due to your needy brother to be turned aside in his case. Keep far from a false charge, and do not kill the innocent or the righteous, for I will not justify the guilty. And you shall not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the clear-sighted and subverts the cause of the just. And you shall not oppress a sojourner, since you yourselves know the soul of a sojourner, for you also were sojourners in the land of Egypt. Now, you shall sow your land for 6 years and gather in its produce. But on the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow, so that the needy of your people may eat, and whatever they leave, the beasts of the field may eat. Thus you shall do with your vineyard and your olive grove. 6 days you are to do work, but on the 7th day you shall rest, so that your ox and your donkey may rest, and the son of your maidservant, as well as your sojourner, may refresh themselves. Now, concerning everything which I have said to you, beware, and do not mention the name of other gods, nor let them be heard from your mouth. 3 times a year you shall celebrate a feast to me. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. For 7 days you are to eat unleavened bread, as I commanded you. At the appointed time in the month of Abib, for in it you came out of Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty-handed. You shall keep the feast of harvest, of the first fruits of your labors from what you sow in the field. Also the feast of the ingathering at the end of the year, when you gather in the fruit of your labors from the field. 3 times a year all your males shall appear before the Lord Yahweh. You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread, nor is the fat of my feast to remain overnight until morning. You shall bring the choice first fruits of your ground into your house of Yahweh, into the house of Yahweh your God. You shall not boil a young goat in the milk of its mother. Behold, I am going to send an angel before you to keep you along the way, and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Now, it's God who's going to take care of them and lead them until they go to the place that God has prepared for them. Keep watch for yourself before him, and listen to his voice. Do not be rebellious toward him, for he will not pardon your transgression, since my name is in him. But if you truly listen to his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy to your enemies, and an adversary to your adversaries. For my angel will go before you and bring you into the land of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I will annihilate them. You shall not worship their gods. You shall not serve them, and you shall not do according to their deeds. But you shall utterly pull them down and scatter their sacred pillars in pieces. But you shall serve Yahweh your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will remove sickness from your midst. There shall be no one miscarrying or barren in your land, and I will fulfill the number of your days. I will send my terror ahead of you, and throw into confusion all the people among whom you come, and I will make all your enemies turn their backs to you. And I will send hornets ahead of you so that they will drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites before you. And I will not drive them out before you in a single year, lest the land become desolate and the beasts of the field become too numerous for you. I will drive them out before you little by little until you become fruitful and take the land as an inheritance. And I will set your boundary from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the river. For I will give the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you will drive them out from before you. You shall cut no covenant with them or their gods. They shall not live in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you. Let's go ahead and move on to John chapter 2 now. And on the third day, there was a wedding in Cana in Galilee. And the mother of Jesus was there, and both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what do I have to do with you? My hour has not yet come." And his mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Now there were 6 stone water jars set there for the Jewish custom of purification, containing 2 or 3 measures each. And Jesus said to them, "Fill the water jars with water." So they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Draw some out now and take it up to the head waiter." So they took it to him. Now when the head waiter tasted the water, which had become wine, and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn out the water knew, the head waiter called the bridegroom and said to him, "Every man serves the good wine first, and when the people have drunk freely, then the inferior wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this in Cana of Galilee, as the beginning of his signs, and manifested his glory, revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum, he and his mother and his brothers and his disciples, and stayed there a few days. Making sure we don't lose notes here. Verse 13. And the Passover of the Jews was near, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And he found in the temple those who were selling oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers seated at their tables. And he made a scourge of cords and drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And to those who were selling the doves, he said, "Take these things away. Stop making my Father's house a place of business." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." Then the Jews said to him, What sign do you show us as your authority for doing these things?" And Jesus answered them, "Destroy this sanctuary, and in 3 days I will raise it up." And the Jews said, "What? It took 46 years to build this sanctuary, and you will raise it up in 3 days?" But he was speaking about the sanctuary of his body. So when he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scriptures which the Lord Jesus had spoken. Now, when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover during the feast, many believed in his name when they saw his signs that he was doing. But Jesus, on his part, was not entrusting himself to them, for he knew all men, and because he had no need that anyone bear witness concerning man, for he himself knew what was in man. There are now, however, a ton of notes that I am scrolling through as quickly as I can so you can get all of them. This is, again, a note-heavy book. There's, when people are first told to read the Bible, typically the book that people tell them to read is the book of John. It's one of the easiest ones to get into, and it makes sense logically for a lot of the sections. So this is one that people are typically given, especially those who don't have the benefit of, what's a good way to put this? Not knowing Jewish rites, but knowing Jewish history. So it's a lot easier for them to come to grips with what's being said in this text. And we are almost there for all the notes. There we go. All right, let's move on now to Job chapter 41. God now speaking about Leviathan. Let's read the note on Leviathan. Another creature similar to Behemoth. But whereas Behemoth is a beast from the land, Leviathan comes from the sea. Leviathan is given the longest treatment of any creature and is even more terrifying than Behemoth. It is mentioned as a climax. It attacks humans. The description of its back, its teeth, its chest and undersides, and the way it causes turmoil in the water all fit with crocodiles as the origin of the representation. Again, the poetic description is anchored in nature, but symbolizes something even more terrifying. Like Leviathan in Isaiah 27:1 and Psalm 74:14, the imagery denotes threatening powers in the heavenly and earthly realms. Again, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, well, it's just this thing, or it's just that. People have lived on this planet for a long time. There have been a lot of animals that have come and gone. If you are a young earth creationist, you also believe that up until the flood, humans and dinosaurs lived together. If you don't believe that, then you believe that dinosaurs existed at some point in the past. I'm not going to get into the issues with old earth creationism or the gap theory or any of those things, but I will say that there's at least animals who have lived in the past that are no longer here today. And there are quite a few that are terrifying to imagine seeing these things as they would have lived. Now we have depictions in I don't know if the term is Far East, Near East, whichever it is, from China and from the surrounding areas, about people who were dragon tamers and who had dragons that could breathe fire, and this was a commonplace thing for people to talk about. It's throughout not only their historical writings, but also the regular day-to-day writings that people would have. I forget the name of the it's gonna kill me. I can't remember the name of the guy. During one of the Chinese dynasties, I don't remember which, they had at least one or two people listed as dragon tamers. This was a common thing for them to even talk about. So when we read through this line about Leviathan, today, not having the benefit of the knowledge of these animals, it's hard for us to say that these are real animals. That certainly sounds terrifying when we read it. But imagine reading a description of a Tyrannosaurus Rex or a Velociraptor without having the benefit of seeing the bones. And remember that the only way that the bones that we've received or that we've been able to find in the fossil record, the only way that we can have those is if they're buried immediately. Any animal that dies in the ocean, its body isn't slowly covered with sediment. What happens to it? The animals who live on the ocean will go and feast on it and tear it to pieces until there's nothing left. Nothing survives to be buried and turned into a fossil. Even on the land, animals that die today, and you can see, even in the desert, you can find the just desiccated bones of these animals that have died in the desert. And yeah, they may have some dirt or dust on them. But what happens? The worms come through and eat it and dissolve it, and it turns to nothing. Otherwise, every graveyard that existed would be full of fossilized human bones because we buried them under the ground. But what happens? In a short amount of time, they're eaten away and they become dust again. Yet we have all of these animals that we know about in the fossil record. Well, those were buried very quickly in layers of sediment. That's the only reason we know anything about them. And think about this, even back, we'll call it 300 years before dinosaur fossils were even found. And people were starting to dig these up and figure out, or try to figure out what they were. Before that time, they didn't have any record of fossils, fossil record of these dinosaurs to even call back on. So they would never have believed that something like a Tyrannosaurus Rex would exist, much less a woolly mammoth or anything else. So as we read through this, understand that from my perspective, and again, I know a lot of people say, oh, well, it's just a crocodile, or it's just a hippo of behemoth. I can't say that because I don't know specifically what they're talking about. What they are talking about, everybody knows what it is. He simply says, what about this? Let's begin, verse 1. Can you draw out Leviathan with a fishhook, or press down its tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in its nose, or pierce its jaw with a hook? Will it make many supplications to you, or will he speak to you soft words? Will it cut a covenant with you? Will you take it for a slave forever? Will you play with it as with a bird, or will you bind it for your young women? Will the traders bargain over it? Will they divide it among the merchants? Can you fill its skin with harpoons, or its head with fishing spears? Place your hand on it. Remember the battle. You will not do that again. Behold, his expectation is a lie. Will he be laid low at even the sight of it? No one is so fierce that he dares to arouse it. Who then is he that can stand before me? Who has given to me that I should repay him? Whatever is under the whole heaven is mine. I will not keep silence concerning its limbs, or its mighty strength, or its graceful frame. If you've ever seen a crocodile or an alligator, the first thing you think of, oh, it's graceful. Probably not. Who can strip off its outer armor? Who can come with its doubled bridle? Who can open the doors of its face? Around its teeth there is dreadful terror. Its strong scales are its pride, shut up as with a tight seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. They cling to one another. They are interlocked and cannot be separated. Its sneezes flash forth light, and its eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of its mouth go burning torches. Sparks of fire leap forth. Out of its nostrils smoke goes forth, as from a boiling pot and burning reeds. Its breath kindles coals, and a flame goes forth from its mouth. I know this is just like every crocodile I've ever seen. In its neck lodges strength, and dismay leaps before it. The folds of its flesh cling together, hardened upon it, and it is not shaken. Its heart is even hard as a stone, even as hard as a lower millstone. When it raises itself up, the mighty fear. I've never seen a crocodile raise itself up. Because of the crashing, they are bewildered. The sword that reaches it cannot avail, nor the spear, the dart, or the javelin. It regards iron as straw, bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make it flee. Sling stones are turned into stubble for it. Clubs are regarded as stubble, and it laughs at the rattling of the javelin. Its underparts are sharp like potsherds. This is not something that a crocodile has. It spreads out like a threshing sledge on the mire. It makes the depths boil like a pot. It makes the sea like a jar of ointment. Behind it, it makes a wake to shine. One would think the deep to be gray-haired. There is nothing upon the dust like it. one made without terror. It looks on everything that is high. It is king over all the sons of pride. And that is all the notes to here. Let's move on to 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Paul continues. I wish that you would bear with me in a little foolishness. This is him boasting about himself, right? Because all of these other apostles so far, so-called apostles, have come up to him, or come up to the Corinthians, and the Corinthians are like, oh, well, I like this guy better. He's a better speaker. He's this, he's that. Much better than Paul and all these things. And they were taking the fact that Paul had been through much affliction as a sign that, well, if the people don't like him, maybe he's not really from God. You get the same idea when you hear from the health and wealth preachers. Well, if you're poor, you must not have good faith. If you're sick, then you must need more faith in God. God would surely bless you and give you all the desires of your heart if you only have enough faith in him. These are the things that they'll typically say. So they look at Paul, who is going from prison to beatings to being chased from cities. And it's easy to see why they might be like, well, do we really want to associate with that guy? A lot of people don't like him. So Paul is defending his apostleship before them, but not according to their standards of, well, he's got all the trappings of wealth and everybody likes him. He's basing his on truth and on what Jesus said would happen to those who follow him. Verse 1, I wish that you would bear with me in a little foolishness, a little stupidity. But indeed, you are bearing with me. For I am jealous for you with a godly jealousy. For I betrothed you to one husband, so that I might present you as a pure virgin to Christ. But I fear that as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, your minds will be corrupted from the simplicity and purity of devotion to Christ. For if one comes and preaches another Jesus whom we did not preach, or a different gospel, which you did not accept, you bear this beautifully. You're glad. Oh, sure, bring this other gospel. Come on in. What's this other thing you have to tell us? What are the things we must do to keep in God's good graces? That's what they were doing. They were following into all of these things as they were coming. Verse 5, for I consider myself in no way inferior to the most eminent apostles. But even if I am unskilled in word, yet I am not so in knowledge. In fact, in every way, we have made this evident to you in all things. Or did I commit a sin in humbling myself so that you might be exalted? Because I proclaimed the gospel of God to you without charge. I robbed other churches by taking wages from them to minister to you. And when I was present with you and was in need, I was not a burden to anyone. For when the brothers came from Macedonia, they fully supplied my need, and in everything I kept and will keep myself from being a burden to you. As the truth of Christ in me, this boasting of mine will not be stopped in the regions of Achaia. Why? Because I do not love you. God knows that I do. But what I am doing, I will continue to do, so that I may cut off opportunity from those who desire an opportunity to be found just as we are in the matter about which they are boasting. For such men are false apostles, deceitful workers, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. Therefore, it is not surprising if his ministers also disguise themselves as ministers of righteousness, whose end will be according to their deeds. Again, I say, let no one think me foolish, but if you do, receive me, even as foolish, so that I may boast a little. What am I saying? I am not saying according to the Lord, but as in foolishness, in this confidence of boasting. Since many boast according to the flesh, according to your body, outside of Christ, I will boast also. For you, being so wise, are bearing with the foolish gladly. So much sarcasm in this. Verse 20. For you bear with it, or bear it, if anyone enslaves you, anyone devours you, anyone takes advantage of you, anyone exalts himself, and anyone hits you in the face. To my shame, I must say that we have been weak by comparison. But in whatever respect anyone else is daring, I speak in foolishness, I'm just as daring as myself. So I'm just as daring myself. Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they Abraham's seed? So am I. Are they ministers of Christ? And now I'm speaking as if I'm insane. I am more so. In far more labors, far more imprisonments and beatings without number, in frequent danger of death. 5 times I received from the Jews 40 lashes less one. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. Quick aside here. When you get stoned, it's to death. They throw rocks at you until you stop breathing. Typically large stones. They try to smash your head in. This happened to Paul. We'll get to that later. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I've spent in the deep. I have been on frequent journeys, in danger from rivers, dangers from robbers, dangers from my countrymen, dangers from the Gentiles, dangers in the city, dangers in the desolate places, dangers on the sea, and dangers among false brothers. I have been in labor and hardship, in many sleepless nights, in starvation and thirst, often hungry, in cold, and without enough clothing. Apart from such external things, well, there is a daily pressure on me of concern for all the churches. Who is weak without my being weak? Who is made to stumble without my burning concern? If I have to boast, I will boast of what pertains to my weakness. The God and Father of the Lord Jesus, he who is blessed forever, knows that I am not lying. In Damascus, the ethnarch under Aretas, the king, was guarding the city of the Damascenes in order to seize me. And I was let down in a basket through a window in the wall, and so escaped his hands. Making sure we get all the notes here. There are, again, quite a few sections here. I want to make sure we get all of them in. There we go, and we did. All right. That is all the text. That is all the reading for today. And that's also all the notes. So that's all we got. God willing, we'll be back tomorrow. Behold, the word of the Lord.